Hello and welcome to Bold Strokes Books Bookathon, January 2024. Who knew we'd make it? I feel like with all the craziness over the last couple years, we're just grateful to all be here together. And this year also marks Bold Strokes' 20th anniversary, which is pretty cool. So we thought it would be fun to start our bookathon with a little roundup. Looking back over the last 20 years and everything that's changed and improved and whatnot. So if you don't know me yet, my name is Sandy Lowe. I am the senior editor here at Bold Strokes. And we have Radclyffe, who is the boss, the publisher. She started Bold Strokes, and we all love her. She is our captain.
You had to say that.
We have Vali. Ali was one of the very first authors that Rad ever signed, and is still riding up a storm. So I can't wait to hear her perspective on how things have gone over the last 20 years. And we have Stacia Seaman, who is our typesetter, copy editor general, and also been here pretty much since the beginning. Stacia, is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Before the beginning.
Before.
Yeah, actually.
Awesome. And when did I come on board? 2013, Rad?
2013. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. So I don't have quite the same.
You passed already. 10 years passed already.
It's true. We totally missed it. We're really bad at that kind of thing. But I don't have quite the same history. So I thought it would be fun to get these guys on here to tell you about what things were like in the beginning. If you do have questions for our panelists, please put them in the Q&A and they will be happy to answer them. But I do have a few to start us off. And I think a good place to start is just with Rad. Why don't you just tell us how BSB got started? What made you decide to start a publishing company? And what was it like running things in the early days? Because from the stories that I know, it was quite different back then.
Well, it started out as a one-person shop, which was me. But before I get to that, I always have to back up and tell all the background for the story, and I'll do it as briefly as I possibly can, because I know some folks have heard this before. But the company was incorporated in July of 2004, but my publishing history began in 2000. I had been writing since the 1980s, but I had never really thought about publishing anything. I didn't write for that reason. So I had a bunch of manuscripts that I had written and just kind of put away. But in the late 1990s, I started sharing my work on the internet and writing fan fiction, and I got involved in the publishing community. And in 2000, I published my first book with Regal Crest. And I think, Stacia, you probably copy edited that or edited the whole thing for Regal. Yep. And that began my personal involvement in publishing. And it was immediately fascinating to me. And I began to have a lot more interaction with readers and began to pay a whole lot more attention to what publishing was all about and where we were in kind of the world of publishing. And it was kind of a bonanza, but it was also kind of a Wild West feeling back in those days. A lot of small presses were popping up everywhere. And that was because of, I think, print-on-demand publishing, which basically small publishers with not much capital could start a publishing company and publish books because you didn't have to put money into inventory. So that really allowed a lot of expansion for queer publishing, because I think queer publishing has always been synonymous with independent publishers. And so I published with Regal Crest, and I also sort of took a little side trip and published a couple books with a couple other small publishers that did not work out very well, which also interested me in the process because they kind of went down the tubes right away. And within about 3 or 4 years of experiencing the process of publishing this way, I began to see that there were really significant ceilings to where we could go as authors with this model. And that was primarily because there was with print on demand, your distribution was very limited. And I think that in publishing, if you only have one vendor or one distribution channel, your ability to reach the market and all your readers everywhere is very limited. And I wanted to try to change that. And I had reached a watershed moment in my personal life in that I had started writing and I really liked publishing. And my wife had just gotten a position in another state and we were going to have to move. So I couldn't really take my medical career with me. It wasn't really transferable. So I thought, this is the time. It was kind of like one of those perfect storms where I had to move. I was very interested in publishing. I had made some contacts like Stacia. You know, Stacia was editing. In fact, she was editing my books before they were going to the publisher. And that was kind of the perfect time to do it. And in my naivete, I thought, why not? You know, I really want to do this. It'll be really interesting. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And so that's kind of what brought me to the point of starting this company.
That's awesome. Do you look back now and you're like, okay, I mean, it kind of sort of worked out pretty good, you know?
You know, I never really thought about what will happen if it doesn't. The first 2 years, we did not make a profit and I didn't take any money out of the company. So I was in a fortunate position where I had saved my royalties from my previous works. And we sold our house and a car and moved into a rental apartment. So we had a little bit of cash reserve. So I didn't worry too much. And I didn't think about, will this work or won't it work? I just worked on making it work. And I'm really surprised always how well it has worked, how big it's grown, how exciting it's become, how many people are involved and how many people are still here, like Ali and Stacia and Kim, who may join us this morning. And, you know, authors that have literally been published now for 20 years by us.
Yeah.
That to me is incredibly exciting.
It's amazing. Okay, so I have with me the first book of Bold Strokes ever published. I love that we started with erotica. Set the tone, I feel like. So this is A Change of Pace, Erotic Interludes by Rad. Rad, why did you pick this one? I mean, because you had published a bunch beforehand. With other publishers, how did it come about that this collection of erotica turned out to be Bold Strokes' first book?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question. I can tell you that the books I had published with other publishers, I didn't get the rights back to right away. It took me 2 or 3 years to filter them in. Probably it's because it was ready and I could get it out. I had a lot of erotica that I had written online and I was able to adapt that into short stories pretty quickly. And I was really eager to, you know, get a book out. By that time I had set up distribution lines with both, at the time it was not Ingram, but it's presently Ingram and Bella Distribution. So I had 2 big distributors ready to distribute my books and I really wanted to get something out. And I suspect now, thinking back, it's because I could.
Yeah, it's usually how those decisions work, I think. Okay, so I looked this up just out of curiosity. According to our web store, which is sort of like all the books that are available for order, we have 1,965 books. And we have 350 authors. And a couple of those you could say maybe they're not currently writing anymore or whatnot. So give or take a few of the authors there. But that just gives everyone a sense of where Bold Strokes started with Rad as the only author. For quite a while, wasn't it, Rad? When did you bring in Kim and Ali?
Right away.
Okay.
As fast as I could. The first year, I concentrated on bringing out my own backlist because I had a base of readers. But I think your book came out in 2005, didn't it? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it was
So,
the first Devil book came out in 2005.
right. So just as fast as I could. We could because we had an editor, and we could, move things through. And with a smaller shop and only a couple of people working, as long as you ride everybody really hard, because I don't do that anymore. You can
Really?
out. So I think I'd have to look, and I don't remember if Kim's book, which Kim was the first author we published, Hunter's Pursuit. And I believe that came out in 2005. I'd have to look that up. But I pushed my own books out for income because I had them and I needed to have revenue. So I got my own titles out very fast and then worked on signing these guys.
Yeah.
Kim.
Yeah.
Here she is. She must have heard us talking about her.
Yeah, we were.
Give her a second to connect there.
Stacia, do you remember the first book did you edit Change of Pace? I can't remember.
Yeah. Yep.
You've edited pretty much almost every single book until we got so big that we had to have,
Yeah, no, I did up until that point. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Awesome. All right, we're going to give Kim a couple minutes to sort out her tech there, but Allie, we'll start with you. Tell us what it was like from your perspective, from the author's perspective, having that first book published back in 2005.
It was awesome. It was kind of, back then I turned in, actually the first book I turned in was not the first book that was published. I turned in Carly Sound first. And then I was sitting in a restaurant, and then my phone rang, and it was from New York. And so you got the phone call. We've accepted your book. We love it. We're going to change everything about it. Do you have anything else? So I had actually just finished what turned out to be the first 2 Devil books, just for my own, I like the genre. I've always loved it. And then so Rad asked me if I had anything else, and I said I did. And actually Rad came up with the title of The Devil Inside, and then The Devil Unleashed came out probably less than a year later. Because I said, no, I just finished a book and it's about 800 pages long. Yeah, no. So I cut it where I thought, would be a natural break. I turned that one in, and then, actually Carolyn was the first one that said, no one is going to read that because it's very, very violent. And I said, well, I liked it. So I don't know if y'all ever watched that SNL skit where the guy was like, baseball has been very, very good to me. Kane has been very, very good to me. I'm actually still writing it. So I was glad that kind of worked out. But to get the first phone call and then going through the editing process, and, it was a small, like Rad said, it was a small shop back then, but you just had a feeling there was so much dedication on people who were working behind the scenes. And going to that first, I think it was GCLS was in New Orleans that year. So the Bold Strokes people were there. They were not that many. But you could kind of see that as far personally, I had hitched my writing career to the right wagon, because it's been careening, just uphill ever since. It's grown, but the thrill of getting that box of books every time you write one. I think I'm almost close to 40 now, but I just love the people. I've made great lifelong friends since I've been with Bold Strokes. So it's something that was exciting then, and it's still exciting now.
Awesome. That's really nice. Hi, Kim.
Sorry, I was so late getting in. It's like my second ever Zoom meeting, and it was just not letting me in, and I was scrambling to get connected. It's hard enough out here. We've had to turn off every device in the house in order to get a good stream out here in the boonies with no internet and half the county out of power. You see, we had a snowstorm last night, so I thought I'd give you all a view. But sorry I missed the top of this, guys. Nice to see y'all.
Hey, it's great to see you. It's been a long time.
I think this is my first public appearance in like 8-10 years, something like that. So
We've all got power out too. We're half power out, and Stasia's on a phone, and it's it's hitting everybody.
yeah.
We picked a good weekend for this. So Kim, why don't you tell us from your perspective? We were just talking about what it was like for the authors to have their first book published. We were just saying that your first book, Hunter's Pursuit, is that right? Your first one?
Yes.
Was published in 2005.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us like what that was like? How did it come about, and how'd it go?
Well, I love this story, and I know Rad has heard this story a couple of times. When Hunter's Pursuit was written and published by a very small publisher that went out of business very quickly, and I regained the rights and was looking for someone to reprint it because I had no idea how many copies had been sold. I never got any money from that first printing. And so I was shopping around, and the Bold Strokes website had just gone up, and it was a very Spartan website. There was not a lot on it at all, other than they were publishing Radclyffe's books, and that was the first author that they had, and they were going to publish Radclyffe's books, and they would also do reprints. So I had read so many of Rad's books, and pretty much anything she had published by that point. So I had a great deal of respect for her, and texted her and said, emailed her and said, I see you have a new publisher, and I have a book that's out, and I'd kind of like to get it reprinted. It's called Hunter's Pursuit. And Rad was one of the probably 5 people who had actually bought the book and read it, which amazed me. And so I was thrilled with that. And she kind of said, yeah, I like the book, and I think the publisher would be really interested. And at that time, it was not at all known that the publisher of Bold Strokes books was the author Radclyffe, or that Radclyffe was Len Barreau, was not widely known. So she said, yeah, submit it. I think she'd be interested. I think the publisher would be interested. So I get this, so I sent it in, and I get this email back from Len Barreau saying, I'd like to set up a meeting with you, or a phone call with you to discuss the book. And I called, and we had this wonderful conversation, and I'm talking to Len Barreau, blah, 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 blah. And at some point I finally said, I'm so excited the fact that you published Radclyffe, because I think so much of Radclyffe. I just love her work, and then I hear this very hearty laughter on the other end of the phone. Well, actually, Kim, I am Radclyffe, and it was a wonderful sort of duh moment, but I was thrilled to get the book published and republished with some quality control this time. Stacia was my editor and was brilliant. And in terms of the covers and stuff back then, because we didn't have stock photos and all of that, we had a real hard time coming up with it, because the book is set in a blizzard and there was just nothing to go for. So I went out to my backyard during a snowstorm and took this picture. And then Sherry, the wonderful graphic artist that did all the covers, superimposed the figures in there, and that was the first book. But it certainly became a lot easier over time to find the right image for the cover. But in the early days, as you all have said, it was a very lean crew, and but a really wonderful, wonderful experience from start to finish.
Awesome. That's a great story.
Can I just put in there that the thing that you can hear consistently is the editing. Like when we brought in people that had done fan fiction or had been previously published, we always had Stacia re-edit the works, because very often they either hadn't been completely edited, or the works maybe needed a little bit more. And that's always been our focus from the very beginning, which has been to try to publish and create really the best works content-wise that we could. And editing has always been a cornerstone. And the other thing about cornerstones is, I remember talking to another publisher at the time about Kim and Allie and Gunn and a couple other authors that I had signed early. And I said, they are going to be the cornerstone of our publishing company. And that's been true. That was true right from the beginning. And those authors are still here. So
Yeah, that's awesome. So
I've always said, and you know, like, how many books did you say we have now? 1900?
yeah,
So,
over 1900.
Wow.
yeah, so you have, I mean, obviously in those, there's erotica, there's romance, there's, you know, sci-fi. There's a lot of genres, but I've always said, especially when I go to different places and you get to meet the readers, it doesn't matter what genre you love, that I would find it impossible not to pick up a Bold Strokes book that's not well written because it's well edited.
Awesome. I forgot my question. Hang on. Oh, my question isn't on my sheet. Rad, I'm wondering, did you purposefully not tell Kim that you were Radclyffe until like the very end just to fuck with her, or
I think so,
or was
yeah.
there some kind of intention? Like, did you not want her to know right away? I'm just curious.
I think it's I probably at the very beginning, I was still establishing my identity in various ways. You have to remember that I came from a completely different place. And all of a sudden, you know, for me to be a publisher and for me to be an author, it took me a while to have all of that fit. And I think that when I was first talking to Kim, I really wanted to keep the publishing process appropriate. And I probably just felt shy about saying, oh, well, you know, I'm the publisher. I will tell you that there was a lot of talk that Bold Strokes was going to be the Radclyffe Vanity Press.
Yeah. Famous last words.
Yeah.
And, you know, I kind of understand that. I had a lot of books and I was going to bring out those books, but, you know, and that may have played into it a little bit, but it's not because only 70 of those 1900 titles are mine. That doesn't count the 400 audiobooks. I just want to say that they carry the same titles, but there are 400 plus additional you know, works in print that are all in audio. But so that might have been part of it. And for a long time, the two identities really weren't well known. There are other authors who didn't realize when they talked to me on the phone in the early days that I was Rad. I mean, I really wanted to have the publishing company be viewed with total legitimacy, that this is a, you know, valid, serious publishing company that has stakes in really supporting authors in their careers from the beginning.
Awesome. I love that. So let's talk about what's changed. We've kind of gone back in time a little bit and talked about what it was like right in the beginning. Let's, you know, kind of sit where we are today and look back over the last 20 years and look at maybe what's different now. Stacia, why don't we start with you?
Oh, okay.
Or not.
Well, the main thing that's changed is we've got so many more people on the editing side, on the production side. Because as Rad said, it used to be that every single book went through me.
Yeah.
For editing and for typesetting. And the very first book we did, the book of erotica, I talked to I forget who was conveying the printing specifications to me, but they said I couldn't use spreads. And I remember asking, well, do you mean spreads as in pages or spreads as in layout? And the person gave me the wrong answer. So every single page in that book is not connected to the next page. Like they don't thread. So any change that we made during editing, I had to completely redo every page of the entire book because they gave me the wrong version of spreads. They meant the kind where you lay it out for an 8-page layout where it gets folded, cut into a book. They didn't mean the 2-page.
I'm surprised I can't still hear you yelling.
it was, you know, I was like, as long as I'm never asked to retypeset it, we're fine.
I was
I
totally
can
gonna
tell
say
you
we're
that-
not reprinting this one ever again. It's done.
You know,
Our,
at this point, you're better off just OCRing it and starting over.
I didn't know that. We probably, I do know that our original printer, we only used them for about 6 months.
Yeah.
Then they went under. And the next printer that we tried to work with wouldn't accept a lot of our covers because of content. That was it.
Oh,
It
geez.
was like, honest to God. So that was, so we had to, like, you know, and then finally, thank God, we got with McNaughton and Gunn, and we've been there ever since. But I'm sure we got the information from them. It's also possible that we didn't relay the information properly, but fortunately,
Yeah.
I think we probably still have enough stock. We'll be okay.
But yeah, so the biggest thing that's changed is just that we have so many more people,
Mhm.
but also in the stories that we tell, there's so much more variety. We've got young adult, we've got not just lesbian, because originally we were pretty much just a lesbian press.
Yeah.
So we've added the G, the B, the T. We've and all points in between. We've added YA. We have, I think, in part due to the proliferation of small independent presses, we've really increased the definition of what queer fiction is, which in a lot of cases is just a really good story with characters that happen to be queer. And that's new, because for a very long time, it seemed like lesbian stories had to be about being lesbian, if that makes sense. That had to be part of the conflict, that had to be part of the story. Oh, power. And I just really like that we've completely risen above that. That our audiences actually tend to get upset if that's your conflict now, because yeah, okay, you're gay, what's your story? And I really like that. And I also really like that we've published a lot of historical books that put us back into history, because we were written out for so very long.
Nice.
And you know, and so you see queer people in contexts where we didn't appear for a very, very long time, even though we were there. And so for me, that's actually the biggest change, is just what we're publishing.
That's great. Can I just ask you, do you find a difference in the first time author works in any way? Or do you think that most first time authors are still kind of coming in pretty similar in terms of workability, skill, anything like that? I mean, anything hit you that, oh, it's a first time author?
The big thing that hits me is because a lot of people are coming in from fanfic, is it's not so much you can tell a first time author, it's you can tell who came in from a medium of a visual medium versus a written medium. So you can tell the first time authors who started writing because they read a lot from the first time authors who started writing because they watched a lot. Because their descriptions are different, the way they write is different, their dialogue is different. And to me, that's really interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Huh. Where would you put me?
Stacia's on the hot seat.
I remembered you from Scully / days.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
But also, I have to admit, as soon as you registered the Ballstra site, I went online and used Who Is, and I figured out who you were.
Of course
Who is? I don't even know what it is.
So I actually knew Len Barreau, the medical person, as completely separate from Radclyffe, but I wasn't going to tell you because you never told me. And I didn't want to be the snoop.
I didn't know any of this. I love all the like Machiavellian, you know.
But it made me
machinations.
feel more comfortable, because an earlier publisher had told me, well, Radclyffe always thinks she's right. She's a doctor, you know. And I was like, I'm from a medical family. That's fine. So it actually made me feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I got nothing there.
Awesome. Allie, why don't we jump to you? What has changed over the last 20 years?
I guess the thing that's changed is before, I mean, even though you had an editor, you kind of went through Rad. Now we have you.
Oh,
The ass that you are. Just kidding.
so sorry about that.
But no, I think one of the things that's changed is like now, I mean, I've had a couple of different editors and I've learned from every single one because I'm one of those talented people that like you go through the first book and you make mistakes and then you learn like, okay, don't do that. And then you go to the next book and I'm able to learn all new different mistakes. So I've never turned in anything that's perfect. So, but it's always a learning process. And I think that's something that is helpful, not just in writing, but through life, is the ability to accept that, you're not perfect and but I think that the talent pool that we have in the editing process, I don't like the editing process because I usually sit there and it's like, what do you know about? It's like, but then in the end you give in anyway. So, but it makes for a much better book. I think that sometimes too is to where you find the ideas. I mean, I've brought in ideas and then you've kind of given me new ideas, which, like I said, I think it improves the book. But I think too is that in the beginning, like Rad said, it was Rad, me, Kim. It wasn't that many authors, and it wasn't, like I said, when I went to that first GCLS, I think there were maybe 8 people at the table. A couple of editors, Rad, myself, and a couple of other people that she had brought with her. But I think too now, because we have so many authors and the people who've come in, and like I said, we don't just write for the same publisher, but we've become friends. So it's a good way to kind of have a sounding board that sometimes when you're stuck, that you have someone to call, someone that attacks, kind of encourage you. So some of the people you've brought in, I mean, they're not just great writers, but they're great kind of motivators when you're stuck. So I think that's one of the best gifts, I guess, we've gotten along the way, is that some of these people are not just highly talented, but they're willing to put themselves out there for you. So whatever that might be.
Yeah. Awesome. So nobody has mentioned the internet yet, which I think is kind of interesting. Rad, can you say a little bit about how publishing has changed since like ebooks and the way that readers get books has changed?
Well, I think it's revolutionary in the sense that we can reach readers we could never reach before. I mean, our international market is certainly much huger than it could have been before because print books were very difficult, especially in the queer market. Print books were very hard to get internationally, whereas with the large mainstream publishers, they would frequently print and publish their books in the countries where they wanted to sell them. We didn't have that option. So the internet has allowed us to reach readers we could never reach before. So I think that's huge. It allows individuals in our own country to get the books they could never get before because they weren't carried in bookstores, and they're still not carried in print in large numbers. So I think that has really completely altered the aspect of how we reach readers and how many readers we can reach. I think that for authors, it's been a great change in how we research our content, for example. So I think that the internet has really opened doors. It's also opened Pandora's box, in the sense that the internet has made it possible for a lot of free content to be put out there. There was always free content. There always has been free content. Certainly all of the fan fiction, where many of us, every single one of us, the 3 authors here, we all wrote fan fiction. And that was free content. And it has its pluses and minuses. It allows you to build an audience. It allows you to learn something about writing, but you're also giving your hard-earned work away for free. And when you're serious about being a published author, giving your work away for free doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think the internet has like anything else, any other innovation that humankind has ever created has created devils and positive things also.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kim, why don't you tell us one of your proudest moments at Bold Strokes? What's something that you're especially proud of?
Would have to be winning the Lammy for Dying to Live, and the year prior was a finalist for Missing Links with Ksenia Alexiou, and that was obviously a wonderful moment. My greatest regret in that I did not attend the Lambda Literary Awards that year, because I really didn't think we would win, because we were up against such really heavy duty competition. And I had also just returned from a trip to Greece writing the next Elite Operatives book. And I'd only been home like 24 hours before the Lammys, and I just couldn't make that jump and stuff. So I didn't go, but definitely that. And, other awards along the way for books, probably my proudest moment for sure. And just being able to say I was, there at the startup of BSB was a great honor and great achievement, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Stacia, how about you? What was your proudest moment at BSB so far?
One of them would also be the Lammy, the Stolen Moments, which I got with Radclyffe for one of our anthologies. But honestly, it's every time an author posts a photo to social media with their box of books that they just got, it never gets old for the authors, but it never gets old for editors either, to be, because we're helping people achieve their dreams and seeing the picture that's sort of the culmination that is amazing.
I think our editors are our unsung heroes. I think without them, none of us would be as skilled as we become without working with them. I don't think it's possible. So thank you.
Allie, how about you? Proudest moment?
I think it's when I signed that first contract. I mean, God, I never realized we'd get there, but it, like you said, I had an inkling, but it was, and the fact that I'm still here, and still writing, still putting out a couple books a year. And the fact that sometimes when you go to some of these conferences and people, they see the name tag, they might not know me personally, and it's like, oh,
They're like, oh, you write Kane Casey.
Exactly. Then they might step away, but no, I think it's just that, like I said, it's not, and some of the emails that I've gotten, especially after Carly Sound came out, that I guess losing a partner, it really touched a lot of people, so they go back to that book and they find comfort in it, or comfort in any book, anything that you've written. And the fact that they might know the story better than me, especially now that my memory is not the greatest. But I just think that people become so invested in some of these characters, and that they're able to, name a page and a paragraph that really touched them. That's really kind of humbling. So it makes you proud.
All right, Rad, you're next. You have a lot to choose from. I think I know what it's going to be. Let's see if I'm right.
Oh, well, there's absolutely, I bet you don't. Maybe you'll have to tell me when I'm done. My greatest pride is the author's pleasure in the work that they do and the happiness that they get from it. So every time one of our authors wins an award and is really proud and happy, or when they have received an email and that pleases them, or they say, I finished my book and I'm so happy that I published it with you. Those are the things that make me proud, that, this company has contributed to the authors and to the readers who read those books.
Okay, you're right. I was wrong.
What was your answer?
I went with a very practical one, actually. I would have said the RWA a couple of years ago.
That's personally my proudest moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Do
I
you
mean,
want to just explain that for everyone who doesn't know?
It's hard. It's hard when you publish and write in a niche market to often get the recognition that you deserve. And I think that's true for every single one of our authors. They deserve far greater recognition, and the editors who work, and the graphic artists, everyone who works in this business. Nobody works for what they're worth. Everyone works from the heart. And it's very hard to get recognition. And when I first started going to the RWA to introduce our company to the Romance Writers of America, I was a completely invisible person in that queer romance was not even a thing. It wasn't even on anybody's radar in 2005. But in 2019, when there was a large push for diversity at the RWA, basically they asked me to speak at the national convention as one of the trailblazers of romance. And that was a recognition for me personally that meant a great deal to me. So I would say that personally was the opportunity to get up there and talk about our literature and the work that we do and why we write about our lives and our communities really meant a lot to me.
It was amazing. I think the recording of that is on social media somewhere, so we'll have to find it and repost it for everyone. All right. I'll take a moment to let everyone know we have a sale going on in our web store. I'm posting the link for you. We have 20% off all the books published last year, every one of them. If the book came out last year, it is now on sale in our web store. So if you'd like to check them out, feel free. The sale will be running right up until the end of the bookathon next weekend. So if you hear a reading or an author in a panel and want to check out their book, you'll still be able to get it on sale. All right, so I feel like we've painted a pretty rosy picture of Bold Strokes so far. And what I really want to know is tell us all the things that have gone so wrong. Right? I mean, Stacia did allude to one earlier with that printer and something that's, that's gone wrong that we had to work around. Do you guys have any stories about, Arad? Okay. So tell us something that's gone wrong.
I printed 5,000 copies of Love's Masquerade without my name on the cover.
That's a lot of copies. That's a lot of money.
It's really hard to sell a book without the author's name. And this was in the early days. I think Love's Masquerade was reprinted in probably 2005 or 2006. So that was a boatload of money. And it was like, oh no. I mean, like the feeling when I realized it was like, what are we going to do? So they had to cut the covers off every single book. They had to cut the covers off. And then, so that made the book a little bit smaller. So then we had to redo the cover to make it smaller to fit the books. So if you have Love's Masquerade and you look at it relative to all my other books, they're going to be 1/4 of an inch smaller all the way around. So
that's why. That's interesting.
That really hurts the profit.
Oh, I love that it was your name too. Have you just seen it so often that you just missed it, or that?
I'm not the world's best proofreader.
That's what I mean. You get to a point where your name's wrong. That's what I think it was one of the Forces books. It had the right title on the cover, but on the on the binding it was wrong, and we didn't catch it until I got the book in the box. And it was like, oh, I'm excited. It was like, oh shit, this is wrong.
Yeah, that's why we have like 5 people looking at those freaking covers now, and still things get through.
I still have a box of those books, Allie.
Yeah.
Downstairs. I'm like, we'll give them away or something. I'll sell them on eBay, right? They'll be a collector's item at some point.
No, and it was just, I think it was just recently I called. It's when you call Sandy and she's not expecting your call, and it's like,
it's like, what's wrong? What happened?
Yeah. And it's like, no, I've made a lot of changes to this book, and this is the wrong copy of it. So we had to push back you know, Ruth had edited it and it's wrong. So yeah, stuff still happens.
Yeah, wrong,
Thank you.
wrong version. That's definitely happened. Fortunately, we fixed it.
Yeah.
Kim, how about you? Can you remember something that's gone terribly wrong?
Well, I was a copy editor for a lot of years, news writing copy editor. So I was always really, really detail oriented. So I can't really recall any problem with any covers or anything like that. I think my biggest problem was my second book, Force of Nature. I was stupidly thinking that I could take the short stories that I had published about that. There was a sequence of 3 short stories that I had made available online as fan fiction. And I thought, well, I can just take those 3 stories and sort of cobble them together and put stuff in between. And that's what I submitted to Rad the first go round. And she was like, that's not really how the way building a novel works. Let's go back to some fundamentals here. So I basically had to scrap the whole book and start all over, which was very daunting because I found my first book really easy to write. It was like divinely inspired. I would go to sleep wondering, how the hell do I write myself out of this mess? And I would wake up the next morning with the solution. It was like a divinely inspired book. But the second book was like sweat and blood and tears from beginning to finish. So that was the toughest, I think, to get through.
You know, I think it's because you started with something that wasn't organic. Whereas when you wrote Hunter's Pursuit, it grew. And that's, you know, how a book really, really works the best. But when you've got 3 disparate pieces, then it's very difficult to make that actually become a whole.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
But
you're right.
You did it.
You're
and
right as always.
It did
I
really
mean,
well.
it was torture to get through that second book, I gotta say.
You don't get between Rad and structure, you know? She's
Oh,
the
no.
all right. Oh, I didn't ask. Did I ask you, Stacia? Something that's gone terribly wrong? You already gave an answer. Do you have another one? I'm sure you
She's
do.
probably got so many.
Can I tell one from another publisher that was actually worse? I
Sure,
worked for
entertain us.
I worked for a really big think tank in DC, and they put out the definitive work on Nixon in China. And the very first page, it said something like, in 1982, when Nixon visited China, like the opening line to the book.
Yeah.
And they printed it. And this was like a huge print run. And for the next week, everybody in the think tank, literally all of us, were in the conference room with an X-Acto knife and a stack of new pages. And we all had to cut the old one out and put the new one in.
Wow. Really?
Like from the president of the place down to the lowest of the, you know, everybody.
Oh my God.
And it was like, how did that get by everybody? How did that make it into print?
Wow.
But
all right, could always be
after
worse.
that,
all right, we are just about out of time. So here's a quick, we'll just do a quick speed round to end things. If you had to tell us in 3 words or less, what do you think is the biggest thing that has contributed to Bold Strokes books' longevity? And I'll start, and I'm going to say Radclyffe is the most important thing. I think Radclyffe is the reason it started, and Radclyffe is the reason that we're still going as strong as we can, because we have amazing leadership at the top. All right, Allie, how about you? What has contributed to Bold Strokes longevity? 3 words. That's it. That's all you got.
I would say Radclyffe, the readers, and the editors.
Love it. Stacia?
love, vision, and quality.
Ooh, I like that. Kim?
Radclyffe, diversity, quality.
Nice. Rad?
I recognize smart people. I put those together so I could get 3 words.
All right, fair enough. Thank you all so much for being here. Please do join us for our next panel on trans books chat coming up in just under 10 minutes. And please do check out the sale if you would like to grab some of these great authors' books. Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Kim, great to see you again. Thanks,
Great to see you guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.